have any announcements, Your Honor.
I do have requests to council. Is it okay if we move up 2-6 to the beginning? We have a couple guests here from the Southgate Rotary, and I want to torture them for the next 45 minutes.
No, that's just too bad.
And I've just been informed, a little bird whispered in my ear, it's happy birthday to Mr. Chuck Norton.
Wow.
Many more.
After 50, we don't celebrate them, right?
That's right. Yeah. You started selling anniversaries of your 50th birthday. Okay, up first then is discuss proposed ordinance number 740 for the safe medication disposal for the city of Riverview. We do have a couple of guests here. If Mr. Steve Alice would come up, and Steve, do you want Chris join in? I may have to pull your chair up here,
We'll
Chris.
probably need a second chair.
And
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
We're all friends here.
Randy, you'd like to scoot over somehow?
Thank you guys for coming.
Yes.
I don't know if I need to go over the background here, so Steve, why don't you just get started, just give us the 30,000-foot view of what you've been busily working on with Randy and some other staff.
Thank you.
What you're doing.
And first of all, thank you for moving us up.
You're
When I
welcome.
worked for the city of Southgate, I went through a lot of budget processes. And now that I'm retired, I don't mind missing
Yeah.
them. So thank you for that. Just to give you a quick overview again, you have in front of you an ordinance that for consideration. That ordinance deals with safe medicine disposal. Specifically, it is designed to set up a program where, at no cost to your taxpayers, you will have a program that will allow residents to get a medical disposal bottle and also put central kiosks for disposal of unused medicines. The purpose of that is to get that out of our water supply. We have a huge buildup beginning to occur because these chemicals don't go away. They keep coming on, and the buildup's going on. So this is a way to dispose of that. And essentially what you're doing is you're giving your citizens the opportunity to say, okay, I have extra medication, I choose to dispose of it by placing it in these bottles. And the bottles contain activated charcoal, which binds with the medication, makes it no longer usable. That's kind of an overview in a nutshell of the program. And the good news is you don't have to pay for it. It's paid for by Big Pharma.
So explain to them how Big Pharma pays for it.
The process came about through a court case that they lost when they didn't want to pay for it, for a producer responsibility law. They ended up taking all the way to Supreme Court and lost that particular, so now they do pay for it. And the process works like this. Under the ordinance, you're going to direct an organization, and it's called MAD. Now, you've probably heard of MAD. This is a different MAD. This is a different acronym. It stands for Medicine and Drug Disposal. It is a nonprofit out of Texas, 501c3, the only one in the country that does this. You will contract with them through the ordinance, and they will do all of the work for you. Essentially, they will send out all of the containers to the residences. They will send out the central collection kiosks. They will track all of that. They will take them back. They will report back to you what they get back. And then you will have an administrator that oversees the program that simply says, okay, I'm going to come back and report to City Council and report back to Big Pharma. This is what we collected, and this is what we've done with the program. So the work is done by an outside organization, so your people are not doing that. The good news is, for whatever time your person, who is the administrator, puts in on this program, they also get reimbursed for this program.
So describe the difference between this and a drug take-back program.
Currently, there are drug take-back programs across the United States. It came from, in 2015, when Big Pharma lost the Supreme Court case. About a month later, they started enacting drug take-back programs, laws. The advantage they thought at that time would be this would be serve to satisfy their requirement to do this across the United States. And you have a drug take-back box. You have one in the police department. And it is designed to be a program where people can come into the police department, they can deposit unused medication in that drug take-back box. But that is the entire extent of pharma's cost. They'll tell you is about a $240 box cost to them. They actually pay about $120, and they don't pay anything else. Your police department then is responsible for securing that, because those are live drugs in there. Granted, you and I both know it's probably not much street value in heart medication, but there's a lot of street value in opioids, a huge amount. So it has to be secured. Your police officers then have to not only secure the box, they have to get the contents out, and they have to take it to a disposal facility. All of that costs you money. It'd be nice if it worked. It doesn't. One of the things that Rotary did for about a year and a half after these were in place, we took a look at the program. We ran a full survey across the country, and we discovered that less than 7% of the population use this drug take-back program. Now, Big Pharma will encourage you to run drug take-back days twice a year, where you have to pay officers to be there to do all of it. All of that, they don't pay for it. They just encourage you to do it, and you pay for all of that. The purpose of this particular program is it's not a take-back program. This is a disposal program. This program, once your residents make the decision to put their medication into these containers, it disposes of that drug, because that drug is no longer used. Security is no longer a concern. You put an opioid medication in here, you can't use it any longer. So it becomes less of a problem as far as security. It becomes less of a problem. You don't have to worry about somebody saying, I'm going to break into, if we have one of these collection kiosks at a church, and somebody says, I'm going to break in, steal the contents of that, they are welcome to take the activated charcoal, because there's not much that they can do with it. It's not going to do anything for them at all. So that's really the difference between the two programs.
So why does it require an ordinance?
It requires an ordinance because Big Pharma says, listen, we lost the case, but we only lost the case based upon the ordinance that we tried. So if you go in and try to do this without that ordinance, then they won't pay for it. It's that simple. They will pay under what the conditions of the case that they lost. In fact, when we gave you the ordinance, pretty much the ordinance is a kind of a cookie cutter ordinance. It has to be, you can't make too many changes. If you change any of the substance, they simply will refuse to pay. It's their position on the problem.
Go ahead.
How often do we have our take-back program for the police department? Is it twice a year?
April and October,
Can you drop them off anytime, though?
yes.
How often do you have officers that take them downtown?
We just had this discussion, not often enough, so.
But,
We work-
so
we
the
work-
manpower, the expense that we're discussing is probably not high?
No, but we've been disposing in Grand Rapids, so that's obviously 2.5 hours, 3 hours away, so.
When we had a DEA agent
Mhm.
out, did they take them downtown? Is that,
You know, I don't know what our protocol was back then, but our protocol lately is when we take it to Grand Rapids and
Yes.
incinerate it.
Is that one officer or two?
I don't know, probably one officer from the DB,
Okay.
but we're trying to secure local, either in Monroe or something, and I think Wyandotte or somebody said there's something we could take.
Anything else? Chuck?
This is implemented, you said California? Correct?
Started in California.
Where else in the United States is it?
There are currently 7 states in the United States, mostly in the West, that have it. There are 40-some other jurisdictions throughout the United States that are not in states that have passed the laws. We came here and looked at the program, and to put it very bluntly, I would like to take it to Lansing and simply pass it as a state law.
Right.
But the issue is going to be, Big Pharma has very good lobbyists, and I'll never come out of a closet up there if I start there. I have to start at the lower level, at the grassroots level. I have to build it up. When I get to a certain tipping point, I will move it up to Lansing, and then it'll become state law.
Statistically, when you're talking about addicts, most of them are not thinking clearly. How many times have you had those businesses, Walgreens, Rite Aid, CVS's, broke into because even though it is deactivated, as you stated, an addict is thinking there's oxycodone in there. How many times have they been broken into?
I know of one in California where there was one actual break-in by an addict who drank the stuff.
they locked
And,
and
uh,
reserved?
You know, it doesn't stay in your stomach very long.
No
Activated
charcoal
charcoal is
doesn't
gonna come out very quickly. It is a vomit inducer.
So out of all those locations, you only know?
I'm only aware of one. It is not a security issue that we are aware of in any way. There are drug take-back boxes. Some of the CVS stores actually have them. I was surprised. I went into Southgate's and saw one there. Asked them about it, and they said, "Oh yeah, we have one of those." They had stuff piled on top of it. It was there. And I asked them how long they cleaned it out, and they said they didn't remember cleaning it out. They had no idea how long it's been sitting in there.
And if Riverview were to adopt this ordinance, it would cost the city, the taxpayers, $0.
$0. You get reimbursed for all of your expenses. It's that simple. You get reimbursed for your attorney's fees for putting this together. You get reimbursed for the oversight that you will do. Normally, we gave you a kind of a suggested fee schedule that most cities incur of your size, and it runs about 30 hours a year, but you get them reimbursed at a certain rate for that 30 hours a year for whoever you choose to be the administrator of this program.
Do you have any other downriver communities involved in this?
Yes, you are the first to be at this level.
Okay.
We have several others that are coming along, but you are in the #1 position right now. So we intend to pass this throughout the entire United States. I'm working with Southgate, I'm working with Taylor, I'm working with Grosse Ile. They just passed their Project Smart Committee at the Rotary Club level. We did their orientation and we're moving them on. I did a presentation today at Trenton Rotary Club. They are looking to be on board with the program. I'm meeting with Canton next, and I'm moving to Detroit Rotary Club after that.
Woodhaven, Brownstown. as
Yeah,
well.
Woodhaven, Brownstown is in the mix too.
So let me ask you this, why doesn't just the Rotary run this thing?
Essentially, Rotary is the exclusive organization to promote this program, believe it or not. They selected us through the agreement with the MADD company and Big Pharma. They have the agreement to work out this program. They're the ones that collect the funds from Big Pharma for you. They're the ones that reimburse you. So you don't have to be billing the pharmaceutical companies. It's actually done through an agreement between that organization that you contract with and Big Pharma, which is, and we say Big Pharma because that is their trade association. All the pharmaceutical companies go through their trade association. And they have a formula built in as to how they pay.
But you have to partner with municipalities because it requires an ordinance, and that's where our involvement is.
Right. And what we just had in, well, California now has passed it throughout the entire state. It started in Alameda, California, and it grew to the entire state. In fact, I will tell you, I just saw a bill the other day. California has decided to take on the administration. This state does it now. And they just billed Big Pharma $7.5 million for 1 year's administration of that program.
Councilman
And they paid
Robbins.
it.
So my grandmother is 85 years old. And she wants to go do her own thing and go to the, or if she gets one of these in the mail, does she put her medication in it at the house? And it's dead at the house?
Yes,
So it's no longer usable as she walks out her door?
the minute she
Okay.
puts a pill in it.
Now, that's my only concern though, is like we were just talking about is, I mean, we all know people aren't in the right state of head, right minds. And my grandma getting, someone waiting to grab her medication. As you said, they won't do it again, but I mean, you shove my grandma down, she's gonna get pretty roughed up, you know what I mean? She's older.
Right.
That's a good point, but explain a little bit how that program works. So obviously, if not everybody's gonna receive this mail, a letter will
This is
be sent
actually
out,
one
there'll
of the
be some
kits that
educational
goes to the
program.
homeowners. In it contains the bottle that has the activated charcoal. They'll hold up to 60 pills. It also contains an explanation sheet, and it contains a self-addressed postage paid mailing thing. So when it's full, they put it in here, drop it back in the mail, and it goes back to the MAD organization who weighs the bottle. They then know what the weight of the pharmaceuticals that came out of your city are. They know by zip code that it came from your city, and that's how they report back. And she gets a brand new kit in the mail shortly after that.
I was more concerned with like the actual drop box itself. Not that, I mean, that's great, drop it back in the mail carrier takes it for you, that's fantastic, but the actual kiosk itself, she's waiting for Walgreens to close, and, oh, like, I gotta get up there. I mean,
Right.
it really, that's a huge concern of mine. And,
Sure.
you know, I know that we have the one, you said it doesn't kill the medication at our police station.
Right.
But if we had that, who is the ones that monitor that? Would that be our officers? Is that extra on them to patrol these locations per se? Or would that be an extra?
I would defer to the police chief on that.
Yeah, I
If
was
there's
kind of
something
like,
that-
how do people do it in the past, I guess?
Yeah, I'm not aware of, you know, it would be, to me, it would seem unlikely that there's a criminal out there lurking around waiting for medication. It's most likely they're lurking around waiting for money or a purse, as opposed to trying to guess if somebody's got a medication on them or not. Or in case of most people, again, there isn't a lot of street value to a lot of the medications that they have. Keep in mind, most medications have no street value. It is only narcotics that have a street value. And that would be an issue if your grandmother has narcotics.
It's a roll of the dice, though, you know? Like, if they'll drive a car into a pharmacy, they'll rob a little old lady, whether they get it or not.
Right.
Rita?
So this might help with this as well. Does the MAD program, do they have an education program that goes with this? Is there pamphlets or anything that will get mailed out? Is there things we'll be posting in the Riverview
Yep.
Register, letting them know, don't bother with this box, it'll make you throw up. Nothing in there is gonna work, don't waste your time, don't waste our time. And then for the home kits, you had said something about they get sent back and are tracked. It's just by zip code, not by household or anything like that, correct?
They do know what household it comes from, so they can send a new household back. But keep in mind, when they weigh the bottle, they're only interested in the weight of drugs that are in there, they don't figure out what type of drugs are in
Okay.
there. So there's a privacy issue there.
Yeah,
that they
that's
don't-
what I
They
was-
don't cross that.
Okay,
But they would need to know what address it came from, so they can send a new one.
okay, thank you.
Lynn?
Thank you. Patches, narcotic patches. They go in here too.
Sure.
Roll them up and shove them
Yep.
down?
Yep.
You can put anything in there, short of
Shake it
needles.
up.
They just don't want any type of needle paraphernalia in there.
Is it
It says-
liquid charcoal
It
in
is,
there?
it's liquid.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
it
say,
says
you
shake
don't have to
bottle,
make a thing.
store and use
Dissolve
again.
pill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
you
do
can
you
keep
need?
using it up till it's full.
Oh, and then,
Yeah,
does
it'll
it,
hold about 60 tablets of
does it
normal
turn a
medication.
color or anything for you
No,
when it's full?
it'll just be full. It'll get to the point that you can't get another one in there.
Okay, thank you.
Does everyone automatically get that sent to their home?
Yes.
So my mother, if she got it sent to her home, she would say, I didn't order this, and probably throw it in the trash.
Happen.
Because that's what she would do.
Our
So
job
then
is to
it-
help you educate the public why they're getting these. And if they did throw it in the trash and they want to now come back to us and say, okay, that was a pretty good idea, probably shouldn't throw it away. Can I get another one? And we'll make sure that happens.
Does that itself come with any type of?
There's an explanation sheet in there as to what it
She's
is.
still gonna throw it
But
away.
do they get thrown in the trash? I guarantee you they do.
And then that's just the end of that, because they're not gonna get another one, correct?
Yeah, and a lot of times, the people that do that, our job is to keep educating them as to why it's a good idea to use these kits.
That's how Rotary continues to stay involved, is educating.
And you can do the same thing if you choose. And you can get reimbursed for whatever time you put in to educate them. You'll have an administrator, and if you feel that an education needs to go out, you can do that and get reimbursed for your time for doing it.
So are they automatically sent to each household, or is it, or is there a request?
No, no reimbursement.
Okay.
It goes to every mailing address listed in the United
So
States Postal
apartments
Service.
too?
Yes.
All apartments, all senior citizens,
Yep.
complexes, individual rooms get them. It goes to every one of those. And like, especially, any business in your city is gonna get a letter from them that says they would like to have a kiosk. Please explain why you would want one. You know, they at least want some explanation about it, but they'll provide that for them too. We have churches who take them, who want kiosks. We have all different groups who decide they would like to have one.
So if I were to get that mailed to my house, I can fill it up at my house, and then do I drop at the key? You said you could mail it back, but I could drop it at the kiosk?
No,
Is
it's
that
really
what
not
goes in?
designed for you to pour it into the kiosk.
So I'm pouring live medication into the kiosk then?
Correct.
That's what I'm worried
Yeah.
So you're not pouring that in there.
No.
You're
about.
taking
You're
the.
pouring your live, if you go to Walgreens,
Right.
you're pouring your live medications into there. They're good to take now, you could take them. Now they're no good as to where this, if you mail it back. So if grandma elects to not mail it back in, then I'm just trying to like bring up all sides of this, because I agree, the water and the water treatment plants, I've read horrific stats on it, and I agree 1,000%.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to bring an other side of this, because grandma's not gonna mail anything, she's gonna just, well, I might as well take it with me, and she's gonna be dumping, so
If that's what she's
the
doing now with the drug take back program, she's taking it to the drugstore
Yeah,
or
there's no
to wherever, and
difference.
she's
Or to
throwing
the
it in a
police
box.
department, yeah.
So,
Well, but you're going to the police station as of right now.
You're right.
Like
Well, you can go to
she's
CVS.
pulling
They have
into,
those.
well, she's pulling into, let's say, pulling into the police station. She's on camera, she's saying hi to the guys and gals, you know, probably talking longer than she should, but, you know, God bless her.
Sure.
So that's why there's,
And there's no reason she can't go to the police station. We intend to have one in the kiosk in the police station.
okay.
right.
At least I think John wanted one, if I remember right. That was his
Okay.
plan. He is not as enamored with the take-back boxes he is with the kiosks where there's no security involved and the fact there's no cost involved.
Yeah.
Got you.
Councilman
Okay.
Workman, oh, are you done? I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
go ahead.
I like the fact that they can just put it in the mail and let it go, let the mailman take it.
And they have to leave.
It's one of the easiest things there is. What my thought is on it is, number one, we're gonna have it at the police department, correct?
Mhm.
If we get into this, if someone's concerned, they can go to the police department and drop it off. But I think if we do it, we have to do an education. I agree with the fact that I'd probably throw in the darn thing.
Well, yeah.
I
didn't order it.
Just to
What
let
you
you
do.
know.
Just because it says Rotary doesn't mean.
Yeah, and I'm not insulting your grandma, but I'd probably do it. I think we can put messages on our water bills too, I believe. We could, if we're gonna do it, let's educate people. And let's, I mean, I think, I would love to see you on the cable TV smiling with your little bottle. But I think that,
Maybe we can do a Facebook Live. You can get yours in the mail
yeah,
and not throw it
Facebook
out.
Live, you can go on Facebook Live and do it. But I think if we do it, we have to do it to where the public is comfortable with it. I think it's a wonderful program, but if we have our people throwing it away, then it's not
It's a
any
waste of
good.
resources.
That's a good
So
question.
it's up
Is
to us
is
to do the
The cost
education.
of the education program a reimbursable cost?
Yes.
So if there's, ads you need to take out, News Herald, Register, or even stories in there, or, somewhere on the Facebook page,
Yeah.
on the website, there's obviously a cost to all that.
And on our webpage, we put it there too.
Let me ask you this, in your past experiences, about how long is the average reimbursement time frame? I've done work for the government, and you'll wait a year for that check.
It's coming from Big Pharma, so.
Yeah, this is not a government.
Not the government.
It doesn't come from the government.
So it's probably
So
gonna
is
be
that
longer
better-
than.
is that better
Yeah.
or worse side of it?
2 years, not one.
They pay fine. When they're fine with paying, when it's under the ordinance and done within the framework of the lawsuit that they lost. They concede that, they have no problem with it. Doesn't mean they want to, it just means that
They
they
were
will.
looking at it like maybe a lot of people won't get involved, and so we don't mind.
They're
waiting a few
very
checks to
happy
happen.
with take-back boxes because it doesn't cost them
Okay.
much.
So that's why we need the ordinance, and we need to follow that to the T, I'm going to assume.
Yes, you do. That's why the ordinance itself is, because the ordinance is the one that they lost, and it's gonna be pretty long. And I'm sure Randy will have to spend time explaining it, because it is pretty long. I've read it, and wow. There's
His
a lot
time
in
will be
there.
reimbursed also?
I'm sorry, yes.
His time?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is billable, recoverable costs. The judge in the court case was very clear. you will pay all costs, period.
Now,
They even pay for parts of it, and we've discussed this with you before, part of the school education program is paid for, that we will supply to the schools that want it. So if they want it, it's free to them, and that's all reimbursable from Big Farm.
I remember the last time you were here, that was something I retained.
That's actually.
They do?
I think they
They did
did
in two
Well,
houses.
on request.
Councilwoman
It's
O'Neill had a good
checked the
question.
bags.
Who determines where the boxes go? Is it by request, or do we solicit it? How does that?
You guys don't have to make any, you're not involved in that decision. You are transferring to MAD, the organization, the ability to run this program for you.
So they can put them anywhere?
They can put them anywhere that they choose. And if you're not happy with the program, you're going to review this program on a regular yearly or 6-month basis, then you're going to decide if you're not happy about something. But yes, they can put them, but they're pretty cautious about where they put them, I will tell you. But they make their own decisions. I can tell you, I know they've gone to churches. They go easily in senior type buildings and complexes because it's very convenient. There are clinics that request them. That's common. There are hospitals that request them. That's common. A lot of the pharmacy companies request them. One of the issues with pharmacy companies is they need to give out a bottle just like that. And you can buy these bottles in CVS. They're about $12, $14.
Walmart.
So you don't throw them
has
out, you sell it.
Yeah.
You said it, nobody else.
If they write a prescription for an opioid, they now have to supply a free bottle for anybody that gets that
Oh, wow.
prescription. That's a requirement now, an FDA requirement.
So I would imagine something like this would have considerable startup costs, and you said it's like 30 hours a year. What would be the startup involvement? I mean, if it's 60 hours the first year and then 30 after that?
It might
or-
be, I don't think you're gonna see it much more than about 30 or 40 hours. That would be about
Seems like
typical.
once people know it, it's on
Yeah.
cruise control.
Mhm. And no place is gonna get one of these that doesn't want one, correct?
Oh, yeah, you don't have to take them. It's strictly by request from the business or the, whatever entity that's requested. And again, it is reviewed. It's not like they just send them out like, because, they do review where they go.
Have we had any discussions on who that administrator of this program would be?
Hey, Jeff.
I second that.
We need a vote here.
Mayor wants to take it on.
If I get paid $100 an hour.
Yeah. Well, Councilman Workman, we thought maybe the police might be the right person, but that hasn't been totally decided yet, meaning Police Chief John Allen.
But we'll have that discussion if we decide to move
Yeah,
forward with
right.
this.
We'll have to, make some decisions.
Just to
Go ahead.
close it out, I think the ones that prescribe the pharmaceuticals should be the ones that are like, hey, you can bring it back here, But,
Now, do they do that, that's a good question, they do that for opioids, but this would be for any prescription medication?
We're trying to keep all types of medications, including aspirin, not even prescription medication.
The things they're finding in water is
we don't want you to
Those
flush-
results were
Hormones.
horrifying.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I still
Yeah,
have
the,
that booklet.
It certainly has an opioid addiction prevention aspect to it, but this is designed, this is a clean water project too.
Your
And-
Honor, thank you for mentioning that. That one of the meetings that I went to for our water system a while ago, we're having issues with different medications, getting them out of our water that's in the Detroit River.
Yeah.
And if you remember, they put a percentage of the different drugs that are in the water and what they're trying to do to get that out. I would have no problem if we could keep people from flushing these medications. If we could go through an education process to stop that, because that is a problem we have. And Jeff will tell you, with the water, that it's a big issue.
Talk about it all the time.
So any final questions?
No, sir.
Comments? Complaints?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys
For what you're trying to accomplish.
And if we can answer any questions, we're always available. Thank you for your
I had
time.
a couple Does everyone in council get one of
You
these?
get one.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you need more, let me
No,
know.
no,
Okay.
we got extra.
All right.
That's the stuff.
We will certainly pass it
I don't
around.
think she got one.
All right,
did?
great.
Yeah.
But if you
We'll-
need
we'll
anything,
be
just let
shocked
us
at
know.
what you read in there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Knocked off one list, one thing on our list.
That's one down.
That's one
Okay,
down.
number 2, presentation of fiscal 2021-22 audit by Plant Brand. Gentlemen, want to come up?
I apologize for calling you the wrong name. Oh, I forgot it. I look at the screen, I'm like, I called him Brian. That's Bill, I'm sorry.
We got Bill Bricky and Ramsey.
Rumsey. Rumsey.
All right.
All right, well, thank you. As mentioned, I'm Bill Bricky, the audit partner in your account, and Rumsey is the audit manager, and we're here to talk about the audit for the year ended June 30, 2022. So really, there's 3 separate deliverables that we're going to cover at a high level tonight. There's the financial statement themselves, which is the larger bound packet. We have our report to mayor and council on the audit process itself. It's the staple 10-ish page letter. And then finally, we have the graph presentation, which really just summarizes some of the key financial data that's included in the financial statements. Before we get started, certainly want to thank Jeff, Heather, and your entire team for their assistance throughout the audit. We are here for several weeks, kind of interrupting their day-to-day activities, and they do a great job helping us complete the audit in an efficient manner. We have covered all of these documents in detail with the audit committee back in December, and so our goal tonight is really to provide you a high-level overview and address any questions or concerns that you have. So I want to start off, and first talk about our main deliverable to you, which is included in page 1 of the financial statements, and that is our opinion on your financial statements. So the main deliverable is us opining on the financial statements. So the city did receive an unmodified audit opinion again in the current year, which essentially means the statements are in compliance with all the rules and regulations. I want to point out that our opinion does not reflect any type of assurance or opinion on the city's overall financial condition, but rather just gives you assurance that the numbers that are included in these financial statements are accurate, and then it's up to the reader to interpret how they feel the numbers and the financial conditions of the city are. So rather than really go into detail in the financial statements themselves, I'm going to go through this graph presentation here, which summarizes some of the key funds. And again, as I go through, if you want more detail on anything, I'm happy to provide that. So we're going to start off by looking at a 5-year history of the general fund revenue, and we have it broken down into 5 categories here. And you can see in the current year, your total general fund revenue was just over $11.2 million, down about $600,000 from the previous year. As we look at the components of revenue, couple items to point out here. You were able to reduce the transfers in, which is the yellow bar there, and that's primarily transfers in from the land preserve into the general fund to subsidize operations. And those transfers were down about $715,000 in the current year from where they would have been in 2021. As we look at some of the other categories, you'll notice the green bar, which is charges for services, was up about $343,000 this year, and that was primarily due to ambulance revenue being up. So with the full-time fire, now you have increase in that revenue line item there. And then there was actually a decline in federal and state sources revenue. That's the red bar there. And we're really more back in line with where we would have been in previous years. But in 2021, you did receive some one-time COVID funding of about $500,000 that was passed through the state of Michigan. And so that was not received in 2022. The city did receive about $1.2 million in American Rescue Plan revenue in 2022, but the way those rules work, that revenue won't be recognized until you expend the money, which did not happen in 22. So you have until 2024 to spend that money. So although you did receive the $1.2 million, it's not included in these numbers because revenue will not be recognized until 23-24. So looking at the next graph, we'll take a look at a 5-year history of the expenditures of the general fund. And looking at the top line there, your total expenditures in the general fund were just over $11.2 million, which is down about $400,000 from where you would have been in 2021. really no overwhelming item that decreased that. You did see some declines in your pension contributions and retiree healthcare costs in the current year that drove that number down. But overall, your expense structure was relatively consistent with where you've been in the past. If you look at the public safety line, you will see that, it did jump up from 2020, and you'll see, 2021 was just over 6.1 million, and 2022 is 5.9 million. And again, that's primarily due to fire going from part-time to full-time back in 2021. So we expect that trend to continue going forward. Also like to point out that public safety continues to be the largest source of the largest expenditure for the city. And the current year was about 53% of total general fund expenditures related to public safety activities in the city. The next graph, we're going to look at the same expenditures, but just broken down a different way. So rather than showing them by department, we're really showing them by source. And so you'll see, as expected, wages continues to be your largest, expenditure item. In the current year was just over $4.8 million in wages paid to the employees of the city, which is about 43% of the total expenses. And actually, if we added up all of the fringes and retirement contributions, your total personnel costs are about 71% of your budget. So really, it's just that yellow bar there, the 3.2 million, which is everything else. All the non-personnel costs are in there. And really being around that 70-75% range of personnel costs in your general fund is pretty consistent with what we see at most communities throughout the state. I want to spend just a minute on this next slide. Really, all this does is combine the previous two graphs we looked at, which is the blue line is the revenue and the red line is the expense. And so to the extent those are kind of matched up, which you'll see they pretty much are from 2019 through 2020, that means you really had a break-even year, meaning your revenues and expenses were at the same level, and so you did not add to or use fund balance in those years. And the reason this graph is so lined up like this is really because the city's been really subsidizing general fund operations with those transfers from the land preserve. And so really the transfers from the land preserve have been whatever they needed to be to make revenue equal expense. And so that's why that line is so closely mirrored with revenue expense. So the transfers have been as high as $2.3 million in some years, and in the current year we're decreased to $1.3 million. So I know you're going through the process of really evaluating the operations of the general fund and how funding is provided, but really as we look at the land preserve transfers, that's really the hole that will need to be filled if transfers can't continue to be made in future periods. So as we look at the fund balance of the general fund, you'll see it's really a pretty flat line. And again, that's because you've really subsidized general fund revenues with those transfers from the land preserve to keep your fund balance relatively stable. So in the current year, it was about $1.6 million. And that's about 14% of your annual expenses. And typically, when we look at fund balance, we like to see it between 10 and 20% of your expenses. So again, you're right in the middle there at 14%. And so these are really the reserves that are available for future items in the general fund. I just want to spend a minute and show a little bit of a historical slide here on what's happened in the city of Riverview and really across the state of Michigan since the decline of 2009 and 2010. So the blue bar is really the history of your taxable value, and obviously your tax revenue is derived from where your taxable value is. And so you can see in 2021 and 2023, or 2022 and 2023, you still haven't recovered from the recession that we had back in 2009, 2010, and it's really going to take many years to get back to where you were. And if I put some numbers on this, and this is one of the reasons, obviously there are financial challenges across the state, is a mill today is not worth as much as it was back in 2009. And if you look at the gap between the blue line and the green line, which is if you just stayed stable there, your taxable value is down about $46 million from where you would have been. And that equates to about $750,000 in taxes. In addition to that, because of the combination of Proposal A and Headley, the city's charter millage would say that you're allowed to levy 20 mills. But because of the Headley amendment, those mills have been rolled back to 16.2 mills. So although your charter says 20, now you're capped at 16.2. And so that decline right there, cost the city about $1.3 million in taxes, because again, if you're able to levy the full 20, you'd have an additional about $1.3 million. So the reason we like to point this out is obviously we think, 2009-10 was a long time ago. The market has recovered. Things are great. But the way it works is taxable value goes down based on the market, but it only goes up by the lesser of 5% or inflation unless you have new growth. And so with the city basically being built out, bedroom community, really you're just going to see those inflationary increases in taxable value, and it's going to take several years to get back to where you were, over 10 years ago. The next slide just takes a look at how the tax bill is split up for residents. So this would be the total winter and summer mills for someone who has a homestead exemption. And really the point of this is really just to remind everyone that although the city collects the taxes for all of the taxing authorities, the city does not get to keep it all. So when a resident pays the bill, really only about 43% of the total tax collection stay to the city, and the remaining 57% goes to the schools, to the county, and the other taxing authorities there. So again, although all the money comes in here, the city doesn't get to retain it all. It does have to distribute to the other taxing authorities their share of that tax bill. So we're going to step away from the general fund and really take a look at the land preserve. And I want to point out a couple things here. So a reminder that the land preserve is an enterprise fund. So it's accounted for differently on a whole different set of accounting rules than the general fund. And so when you look at the numbers in there, it's not apples to apples if you're comparing it to how the general fund operates compared to how this operates. So this information really comes from the financial statements, page 18 and 19, and a couple things to point out here. So the general fund, does have a deficit net position of about $28.5 million. The primary reason for that large deficit is because we are recording long-term liabilities in here related to future post-closure costs when the landfill's done and has to be closed and maintained for 30 years or more. And we also recognize, any unfunded pension and retiree healthcare liabilities in these funds. Also want to point out that at the end of the year, the land preserve is in what we call a working capital deficit, which is what the state looks at to determine if you're in a deficit of about $3.7 million at the end of 2022. As we look at the components here, so the black line really is the revenue, and then the bars are the expenses. And so the bottom three bars there, the red, the purple, and the orange, those are what I would call your cash expenditures. Those are real expenditures, meaning you're paying for these items. So this is your operating expenses. You can see the operating transfers out there. So that's the money. In the current year, there was $2.1 million that went out. So 1.3 went to the general fund, $500,000 went to the capital improvement fund, and another $400,000 went to the rubbish fund. So in addition to the land preserve transferring money to the general fund, there are other funds that have also gotten money from that. But the point is, those bottom three bars, that's the cash expenditures. And then the green is the change in the landfill liability. So this isn't something that you're paying right now, but this is measuring the incremental increase in that liability as you fill up the landfill, and you have an engineering company tell you how much is it going to cost to cap and maintain this thing when it's done. So that's the green, and then the yellow is depreciation and other changes in your pension and OPEB liabilities. So really when we think about the land preserve, I always like to focus on cash flow. Did you bring in more cash than you paid out? And in the current year, you did bring in about $2.1 million of revenue in excess of these expenses. But out of that $2.1 million, you need to pay off debt and also fund capital. So in the current year, you were able to reduce that working capital deficit from where you were a year ago by about $1.6 million. So the land preserve's net, or the land preserve's deficit did improve in the current year, and it's less than it's been in the past. But the big challenge going forward is there are significant capital costs that are projected for the next couple years. And in order to pay for those, the land preserve is either going to have to borrow more money or stop transferring some of the money to the other funds to maintain its current position, or stride towards eliminating that deficit. As we look at the operations of the land preserve, the main issue has been COVID has reduced revenue, and you've had significant capital outlay to open the new cell, and that's really drained a lot of the funds that are available in the land preserve. Any questions on that before I move on to the next fund? I know I said a lot of stuff there, and I know it can be confusing.
Any questions so far? Chuck?
Just to make sure I have it correct, you
Sure.
said there's a $3.7 million deficit?
Yes. Working capital deficit, so current assets minus current liabilities, and that's the state's measure of whether a fund is in a deficit or not.
Okay, to my team and to you, I am not a finance person. Okay, I probably have a better chance of speaking Greek. But why are we transferring money from the landfill to the general fund if there's a deficit?
Fair question, and I would say that that's done through the budget process, and it's historically, the land preserve has generated cash, and that's been one of the benefits of having this fund, is it has subsidized the general fund. And I just think over time, as the revenue has not been available, you just haven't changed that behavior of budgeting that transfer.
Okay, because, full honesty with everybody, I'm not a finance person, so basically, simple answer, you're using a credit card to pay bills. And that's been going on since, how far back?
It's been going on for a long time.
Bills due.
Yep.
That's it.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I have no questions on that slide.
Okay, the only other thing I'll point out is, as we talk about interfunds, the land preserve has borrowed about $5.5 million from the water fund, and that's how it's been able to continually make these transfers, even though it hasn't generated the cash flow on its own.
5.5 million, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I was just gonna say, it was borrowed from the water fund?
Yes.
And when was that? Does it say?
It's been going up and down over the last several years.
Okay, thank you.
I want to move on and talk about the golf course, so golf course and practice facility. Again, this is also an enterprise fund. It's on the same accounting basis as the land preserve, and this is on page 18 and 19 of the financial statements. When it comes to the golf course, you've really made a lot of good progress here. You can look at the black dotted line there. You can see revenue has really spiked up in the last 2 years from where it would have been. And in the current year is down about $235,000 from where it was last year. And the primary reason for that decline was last year there was a one-time sale of some golf carts that generated about $275,000 of revenue, one-time revenue. So the overall operating, I'd say, golf fees and things like that, continued to be strong, and that decline related to that. Similar to like I just talked about on the land preserve, the orange slide and the green slide, those are really your cash expenses. The yellow is non-cash items. Those are the recognition of future liabilities, but not current cash outflows. And so you can see in the current year, the golf course did cover its operations. It was essentially break even. It didn't add anything to its reserves. And to me, the biggest thing that needs to be dealt with in the golf course is the golf course also has loans outstanding of about $2.5 million, and it's borrowed money from the water fund and the land preserve, and that was done in previous years to fund various capital projects. And so the only way they're going to be able to pay that back is if they are able to generate cash flows in future years. So this is a fund that's close to getting into a deficit situation. So you need to continue to monitor the spending in this fund to make sure that it doesn't get into that working capital deficit. So at the end of the year, it had about $40,000 of working capital. So if that goes down, you could be in a deficit situation in the golf course as well.
Bill, can I
Yes.
ask one more?
Sure.
You said $2.5 million in loans from the water fund and the landfill?
Yes.
Okay, so we're borrowing from the landfill that is in a deficit, just so I understand.
Correct. So this again does the exact same thing. This looks at the water fund, which is also on the same method of accounting. And really the water fund has had very stable operating results over the past 5 years. When you look at the revenue and the bars, I mean, the water fund really has generated sufficient cash flows to fund its operations and put reserves away to fund future capital. And this is why the funds have been available for the water fund to loan money to the land preserve and the golf course. But overall, the operations of the water fund remain strong and, pretty stable. I want to spend just a minute and talk about the legacy costs of the city. And so we're going to look at both the pension and retiree health care liability. And so the blue bar is the money that you actually have. So that's money that's sitting in investments. And the red bar is the liability that's been calculated by an actuary. And so you'll see on the pension side, the system's 84% funded, which is down from 102% funded last year. And the main reason for that decline is if we think back to June 30th, the market was not doing well at June 30th. So you had substantial losses in your assets of the pension fund, which drove down that funding. And this is not unique to Riverview. We've seen this everywhere. And obviously, we're hopeful that the market turns around and this goes back up. But being 84% funded is a good thing. Most pension systems across the state are 70, 75% funded. So being at 84 is still good. Obviously, you'd like to be at 100 where you were last year, but that blue bar there, the net position, is gonna vary based on the market and where it's at June 30, because it's measured at a point in time. On the OPEB, which is the retiree healthcare liability, you'll see that that's only 2% funded. But I will point out that the city has only started funding that liability 3 years ago. So you've been putting $200,000 a year into that fund to help build it up. So it's going to take a long time to get that more funded. But again, this is you've opened a trust and you've started funding it, so you're moving in the right direction. But it's just going to take time
What's your
to get that
definition
funded.
of long term?
30 years. And I will.
200,000.
Oh, I haven't done the math, but I believe so, because there was the state mandates you to file a plan with them if you're under 40% funded. And so I believe 200,000 was the number that the actuary came back and said, if you do that, you will get funded within the 30 years. And I also will point out that the city does continue to pay 100% of its retiree healthcare bills. So this isn't saying that you're not fulfilling your obligations. This just means you're not, you're paying what we call pay as you go. The bill comes in, you pay it out of current resources, as opposed to setting funds aside to pay it later. So those are all my comments on the financial side. And I guess before I turn it over to Rumsey's going to go through a couple items in our end of audit letter related to the audit process.
Bill,
If there's
before
any
we go, I've got
questions.
one question.
Sure.
So that everybody doesn't think we just totally ignored this. Am I correct in stating that this started with the Gatsby, where we had to start tracking the OPEB, and it had never been tracked before? And how many cities around us did the same thing we did that you're aware of?
Oh, I would say almost all. So
Okay.
it's only been in the last 7 or 8 years that we've even measured that liability. It used to be everyone just paid as you go. That was the rule. They changed the rule that made you measure that liability. So it is not like you were doing something wrong. You were following the rules, but they changed the rules.
Can you tell us the acronym you used? What is
It
it?
was Gadsby, whatever it stands for.
Yeah.
General accounting.
Yeah, GASB, General Accounting Standards Board, number 75, 74 and 75. Those are the rules that said now you have to measure that liability and record it.
And the rules changed 7 or 8 years ago.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Okay, Ramsey, you want to go through the list?
Yes, thank you everyone for the time. I'm going to cover the end of audit letter. This is the 8-page letter in your packet that's addressed to management, the mayor, and city council. This letter includes 3 sections, and I'll go over each section at a high level, and feel free to stop me at any point with any questions. The first section includes the results of the audit. This is all of the required stuff that the audit standards require us to tell you. So even if there were none of these items, we're required to say that there were none of these specific items. There are a few items in this section that we wanted to cover, though. The first is we are required to speak on any compliance matters that are discovered during the audit. So during the audit, we noted the city was out of compliance with a state financial assurance requirement. With respect to the landfill, the state requires that any public landfills have certain financial assurances, whereas the city is required to set aside certain funds for capital and closure costs. The city was required to have $18.9 million set aside as of the end of the year, and the actual fund set aside was $17.4 million. So as of year end, and I believe as currently the case, the city is actually working with the state to resolve that out of compliance. So this is disclosed in the financial statements, and it is disclosed in this letter as well. The other items included in this section, if we did have any other significant issues related to internal controls over financial reporting or material weaknesses of anything or anything of that nature, we would be required to report those to you. We do not actually have any internal control matters to report to you as a result of the audit. We do have one past adjustment to report to you as part of the audit, so anytime we detect any misstatements, we are required to evaluate if they're material or not material. So we did have one misstatement that we determined was not material, and it relates to the city's recording of certain charges for services, including, or primarily ambulance revenue in the general fund. The accounting rules would essentially dictate that you would record revenue when you have earned the revenue and they're available, essentially collected, within a certain period. However, the city records the revenue in the general fund when they're earned and not without taking in regard to when they're collected. So we evaluated this total misstatement, and it was a total of $78,000, in concluding that it was not material to the financial statements, so that's why we're able to pass on it. The last thing I wanted to point out in this section is this section addresses any significant estimates that are included in the financial statements. So the city has 3 material balances that we noted were measured based on a significant estimate. That would be the measurement of the OPEB liability that we were just referring to, the pension liability, and then the liability related to closure and post-closure costs of the landfill. So we evaluated the management's method for recording these estimates, which included working with actuaries and working with environmental specialists, and we ultimately determined that the measurement of those liabilities was reasonable. The second part of this letter includes other informational and other informational items and recommendations that we would make to you. So these are not findings or internal control matters, but items that we've highlighted for your attention. The first of these refers back to the interfund borrowings that Bill was just referring to. These are disclosed in Note 4 of the financial statements. And again, those are the borrowings between the land preserve and the water and sewer fund that Bill was just mentioning, in golf as well. So our recommendation with these is these really need to be formalized into loans, and they should be there should be an effort to try to pay them back, and there should be interest along with those loans and formal repayment terms. The second item in this section is we'd like to encourage the city to continue looking or working on a 5-year plan to really help forecast revenue needs, cash flow needs for not just the general fund, but really all funds of the city, including land preserve, golf, and water as well. The third section of this letter includes the latest and greatest from Lansing. This is the legislative updates that are not necessarily unique to the city, but kind of gives you an update of everything that's going on at the state level that might impact local units of government. There are lots of sections in here, but I want to cover two items in particular. The first is that in this upcoming year, the state has required all local units of government to adopt a uniform chart of accounts. So the city will be adopting and changing the chart of accounts to adopt to this new standard, or to conform to this new standard. The end result, the financial statements, should not look very different for you. It's just more so the inner workings, the accounting in the background that's going to change the certain account numbers that are used for various activities. The other item I wanted to mention in this section is we do have some reminders in here about compliance with federal awards. As you may be aware, any entity that spends more than $750,000 in a given year of federal dollars is required to obtain a separate federal compliance audit. The city has not had one in a couple of years at least, and with spending of ARPA money or any other federal grants, if that exceeds $750,000 in a given year, that would trigger the requirement for a single audit. So if that does happen in this upcoming year, it would just be, I guess, a reminder or a heads up that audit would be required, and that audit is it's entirely separate from this financial statement audit, and it requires much more testing in the areas of compliance. So that concludes the items that we wanted to highlight in the letter. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to cover any of them in greater detail.
Real quick, the federal compliance audit is any government funds used over $700,000, you said?
Correct. Spending of federal awards in any given year greater than $750,000.
Got you, $750,000.
And right now, we have 1.6 from the AARPA grants.
Correct, yes. So if all of that were spent, or if $750,000 of that were spent or applied in one given year, then it would trigger that. And I will mention that if the only grant that you have is the ARPA grant through the state, the state does, or there is actually a provision where you can have a separate examination done in place of a single audit, but there are certain requirements that you have to meet to qualify for that modified version of the compliance audit. But regardless, there would be some sort of compliance audit that's required.
Have we spent that $750,000 this past year, or not? No? Okay.
Yeah.
Close.
They've been holding on to the ARPA fund, they didn't spend it yet.
Mhm.
They were gonna decide on how they were gonna spend it, but it may behoove us to break
Yeah.
it over a couple years.
Mhm.
What- My question, lack of knowledge, why? So, I mean,
I don't know, they were saving it for whatever.
no, I'm saying, in the future, breaking it down is what you're saying.
Yeah,
And my question is, what would be the benefit of that?
single audit.
Okay,
We're trying to avoid.
thank you for that.
Or a special audit, whatever you want.
Right, yeah, we don't,
Spend more money on it.
special sounds expensive.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments?
Are we done?
They are, unless you got your questions.
I just have one question. The last time we met, there was a statement made that you were asked to gloss over. You were not asked to gloss over anything on this audit, correct?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question.
Pardon me?
Good question.
That's why
I
this one
just
was
want
so
it
painful.
said out loud so everybody's on the same page.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you
Great
guys so
job.
much for your time and energy
Thank you.
and honesty. America brutal.
Oh, yeah. Swords.
Hot
Huh?
Hot one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, 2.2, discuss the strategic vision plan 2030. Dave?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Bill reminds me of someone I've seen in a movie. I can't remember who was directing.
Is it illegal? No. Improper, yes.
Let's see. Do you already have? Here's some more coming this way.
Yeah.
Randy, you gotta ask Jeff, I'll give you a file, have it?
Is that extra?
Thanks for that.
No, that's
I was
me.
looking at the store the other day and I was like,
Absolutely. Yep, we'll get you one.
This officially makes it that I need it.
You know, I might use one too.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Okay, I'm up, thank you. As I understand, council would like to embark on a new strategic vision plan.
Yes.
They want to title it Strategic Vision Plan 2030. They'd like to have actions and policies set up to 2030 right now. What I've done since we got that task is to help support you. I went through, I found every file I could from the past history.
Thank you.
What I found out was the time they did this before, back in the 90s, it was quite the intensive effort. They took 1 year between 1994 and 95 to create a 25-year plan. They had 7 task forces. They must have had, I was trying to count, they must have had 70 to 80 volunteers from the community step up. They had task force meetings, at least 3 or 4 of them. These were also staffed by 7 or 8 volunteers to take notes and record everything, and 2 professional consulting firms also took part in it. They came up with 46 goals and 192 strategies they wanted staff to undertake at that time. In 1996, they decided, let's have the city wanted a plan implementation committee. Let's just whittle this down and see how we're going to do with this. That committee started in 96 and they ended in 1998, so it was a 2-year process on top of that 1 year. This committee ended up condensing the 1995 strategies into 27 strategic objectives and 86 actions. Notes I found in this is over that 2-year period, this committee met up to 3 Saturdays per month, every month of the time. They took the summer months off. In 1998, the committee was renamed the Riverview Vision Committee with the primary task of taking those 27 objectives and 86 actions and implement them, including advising the council on annual budget items. That, as far as I know, that went up to about 2001, and I lost track at that point. It's like you couldn't find any other information after. I don't know if it dissolved or what at
It's all
that
on
point.
someone's computer in their house.
They
So-
didn't have them back then.
So,
The hell stuff.
so that's where they
With a
said.
floppy disk with a lot of
So,
stuff on it.
I took all that, and I know we want to get this done by 2030, and I started looking at
I was
the amount of
wondering if
time
we-
they did in that. It's like, well, we'll be in 2027 before you even get started on it. So then you got a 3-year vision plan. And so, that handout I handed you tonight was, I kind of broke, just I took a stab, I took like a dozen different ways you can do this, dozen different timeframes, budgets, and I kind of broke it down into something that's more workable, like a year-long process. And what I show is like 5 tasks that we need to do. The first task would be pre-planning orientations, everybody reading those objectives, understanding them, deciding how many meetings you want, how we want to engage the public, things like that. That would probably involve new plan outline, setting a meeting schedule and such. The second task would be fact gathering. After we evaluate, the council would evaluate the strategic and objectives and the actions of that 4-year plan and prepare a list of questions, send out to outside resources to get guidance. Outside resources, loosely defined, could be department directors like myself, it could be outside agencies and things that are affected. Because some of these objectives were dealing with library, we're dealing with literacy, we're dealing with things that are partnerships with other communities. I thought that would probably take, an estimate can fluctuate about 6 work sessions. And we need some support from probably departments at least to sit there and look at what you want to do and how they can get that done to help you understand. I will back up a little bit and say, based on this recent thing, I did send out that 4-year 1998 plan to departments. They were very good at least assessing what that said and got back to me with what their response is, what they know of got done, what they know of doesn't apply anymore, what they got started, and just get a feel for how the departments really understand what happened. They were really good to get back to us. I'm gonna go on. In terms of fact gathering, we'd go on to the third task, we'd have to draft the plan. That's when we start putting it together, let's start putting our objectives, our actions together. Probably route them through departments, route them through agencies, route them through whoever you need to see routed. And come back, and it's more of a feedback loop. And you refine and refine. At some point, I would think after a couple internal work sessions, the council may want to consider a town hall meeting or something to get the public to hear what their input would be. You would set it up and do a large presentation, see what they think about your ideas and how to take to the city in the future. Then the last one, or task 4 would be completing the plan. After you take everything, then you prioritize, you figure out who's going to do what, responsibility levels, budgets. And then the last task on the second page would be that you would have a final plan. The committee would bring it to council, get the thing adopted as policy, and then we would start working on it. You have a committee set up afterwards who advise the budget as you go. I think in terms of staffing, I was just roughly looking at it. If this is a short process where you have some task force meetings, the staffing could be done by a part-time person, just taking notes, organizing all the documents, getting the feedback, preparing agendas, preparing minutes for you to look at. Someone needs to do that. But staff is stretched out right now, so I don't know if staff could be freed up. I do see staff, including the manager, myself, and maybe other department heads at time to time, sitting down and advising you on some of the things, some of the items you bring forward to see how you feel and see how they can make it work for you so we can get some implementation happening.
Dave?
Yeah?
Can I interject?
Yeah.
What about getting some soon-to-be college graduates
You could-
interns?
That's another one.
Wondering about that.
I looked at the internship programs of different places. They can only guarantee if 12 hours a week for an intern. And every 3 months this project goes, if you use an intern, you're gonna be changing interns.
Okay,
But
but
that's what can get up,
the world's changed. We're not gonna have a folder of paper. It's gonna be
Yeah.
digital.
yes,
And we're gonna,
that's absolutely.
how much does it cost the city to bring in an intern?
I was estimating about $3,000 a semester for each intern.
Hmm. Okay.
I don't know, what they typically, all these internship programs do is, you get an intern, what you do is you pay for their classes. They get 3 or 4 credit hours, you pay for their classes in essence. And they trade off work experience through the getting their classes, their credits paid for.
Are there grants available?
Not that I know of. I mean, I haven't looked definitely into it. I called a couple different places to find out how their internship programs work.
Mr. Mayor, through your chair
Go
to
ahead.
City Manager Dobek, is that something we could investigate if there are grants available? I know there's a lot of
There must be some
federal
for
grants
some type
out
of
there.
community development.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, SEMCOG's sending in.
I don't know if we-
Right.
Yeah, we,
Oh, here
we
it
still have
is.
access to the SEMCOG grant finder, where you can,
Well,
Yeah,
we
we do
we
get
get a lot of emails.
have you used
about
that?
A little bit. It's difficult to get through.
It's
They got like-
convoluted.
Well, it comes out to 1,000 opportunities every week.
So they're putting in roughly 12 hours a week?
Yeah, it's- that's what-
$3,000
Yeah.
for their classes?
Yeah, roughly, rough count, it might be a little bit less, might be a little bit more, depending on the university and what they're doing. What they do is you pay for what they determine if you have a 3 credit hour class. They figure 3 times the 3 credit hours, what they would put into studying or homework or doing papers, so it comes out to 12 hours.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Through your chair to Councilman Workman, back when you were the city manager, you had used interns in HR.
I did.
Do you know, was it that expensive then? Has it increased?
It wasn't that expensive.
Okay.
How many years ago was that?
That was
Just a couple.
just a couple.
More than 2.
3 or 4.
That was back in 2012.
I was thinking 12, 13, so.
12.
I know a lot of internships aren't paid anymore at all.
Yeah, I mean, we could look, I don't know, I didn't do an exhaustive, I called a couple professors that I knew and just get a feel for the
Just
other
my
program.
son's college age, and I do know a lot of them are struggling getting paid internships at all.
So,
At this point, is there a high school
It's just
student
sad.
who's real good at this?
Right.
It's above high school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is almost
I
graduate.
know, I'm looking
Yeah.
at this and I'm,
Yeah, it's sad that they aren't paying much.
I didn't mean to interrupt, Dave.
No, those are good questions. I checked into, I checked, can he assign a class to do it, so we get more than one? I checked internships and to see about recent graduates, so.
Bring the whole
Really?
class down.
That's it.
Wow.
No, those are all good questions, so.
I mean, may I speak?
Go right ahead.
I appreciate
Study
this.
session.
I appreciate this. I think it's something that is, after that presentation, is at the very top of the list, and I think everybody would agree on that. But,
This feels like now we can move and get something done.
right, and not everything has, I mean, the world's changed. I mean, if you watch YouTube as much as I do, there's a lot of meetings that are being done over the web. I mean, being part of the McLeod initiative, you know, that's all Zoom. If you could do some of that to ease some time. But we're going to have to really think outside the box and try to use it.
We need a good brainstorming session.
Right, and use as little bit of city employees, because I mean, we're pinched financially.
Yeah, and that's the idea, you know, we'll find somebody to do it. I was involved, I was on the school board when we did it the last time. And I'm just thinking we have a large number of less employees than we've had back in the 90s. So we gotta be strategic on who does this. You use the interns where you can. But I think, I don't know if we even talked about it yet, you need that one or two people that are gonna be the
Well, a facilitator.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing in a previous life, when you get involved in meetings, I facilitated meetings. People want to start talking about how they, their dog plays with this, and no, that's not why we're here. A time limit, and then you go out and you execute, and then you come back and reevaluate everything. I also think from the previous one, technology has changed a lot. Do you know if anybody's done a deep dive onto other communities that?
Yes, I went through and went around the state and did a search on 3 or 4 other communities, trying to find the size of Riverview.
Did you find anything valuable?
Yeah, how they handle it. I found out different processes and how they handle it. I can't quite remember, there's so many that I was looking at, but.
I mean, that's really what I'm looking at. Look for a champion that was successful.
Yeah.
And not reinvent the wheel.
Sure, that could be done. And I got a couple examples actually in here that I can share.
How can we all get a copy of that?
Oh, I can make you copies of it. I just did not know if you wanted this whole document copy to go through.
Well, as a team, yeah, because we could spread it out and say, you take.
If it can be ready for task 1, planning and orientation, whoever's on the committee, whoever needs it, that can be a good thing for us to.
And this can be fine-tuned, not tonight, but this can be fine-tuned when you have a committee set up.
Absolutely.
Right.
And this is something that is gonna take rolling up your sleeves, and a lot of the elected officials instead of the employees, because our employees are overworked.
We're salary, so there's no overwork.
Right.
Your Honor, also, I think would be very critical is to find a few committed residents that want to be involved with council, because they'll be able to take, a good part of this on, and then
100%.
it'll be the focus of council's vision, but also the help of a few good residents that want to step up and get involved with it,
Well,
I think.
Any resident that applies cannot be, there's no names to be put out ever, that someone is not allowed to get an application. Just saying it now, if someone wants an application, they get an application.
Dean, Councilman Workman.
The previous one was really involved.
I saw.
Okay. I think, my own opinion, is we need to narrow the perspective. And as a council, we need to get with Dave and to narrow it down to what is important right now. And I think we should push for like 5 to 10 issues. And then get the involvement of the community. To undertake this right now, we can't. That can't be done. But we need to have a direction that the city is going in.
Yep.
So I think with Dave's help, look over some of the, my view would be to look over some of the other ones you've seen in other cities. To get with Jeff and find out some of the pertinent things that are going to affect our community.
Yes.
Immediately.
Immediate.
And then bring those to us, kind of like a checklist of what we need to go on.
Okay.
So that we narrow it down. If we take it too big, we're going to be running in circles and nothing's going to get done.
Chasing our own tail.
So we need to narrow it down. That's
think so.
that's my first
Short
feeling.
term, long term.
And to piggyback off of that, maybe get a hold of the department heads and say, hey, your 5-year plan, where do you want to be? Your 10-year plan. You know?
That's where I'm looking at going,
Right.
and we get what we can accomplish, what we can do. Now, one thing I want, at least I am comfortable, I've talked to Jeff about our finances in the past, probably in great detail, and he's gonna meet with you guys, and I'll admit, I've been a pain in his ass. Because you know I asked for months and months information that I thought was occurring. I'm very comfortable with his skill set of where we're at, so don't look at what was reported to you earlier, and he's already 5, 6, 7 steps ahead of
Oh, absolutely.
all you people right now.
100%, we know that.
And,
Jeff's wheels
but there's
are
gonna be some
working.
tough decisions, and we're gonna have to spend some money to get him help, to get ourselves going in the right direction. And I think that's very important. He's gonna need the help to do that. And he doesn't, we need to look forward, not look back, and get this thing straightened away.
Mhm.
That's, at least that's my 2 cents. So
That's how I try to live my life. Rear mirror smaller than the windshield.
Absolutely.
Your Honor,
Randy?
my memory is that there was a council motion that passed that constituted the committee. So, you know, when you talk about applications and that sort of thing, that would, you already have something in place. So if you're gonna, you could run with that, and that begs the question, at what point do you launch that? Because the committee's already constituted and could start working, or you could reconstitute it and include others. I know that administratively, we kicked around a couple of different models. One model is to have the council members that were named in the resolution that passed to serve as a steering committee and determine how to move forward using what Dave put together. And to me, that may make a lot of sense.
Yeah, like that, we have the members of the committee determine who the other members should be, you know, members of the communities, school district, those types of things, you know, to be part of it.
That's just waiting to get punched in the mouth. If you have
Well, I
somebody-
don't think a school's gonna punch us in the mouth.
No,
but I think there'll be
not
more
the
than
school,
one.
but there will be
Okay.
people that are
You're
gonna hit
referring
that mic
to
that are
resident
going to.
selection?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want to be a part of have the residents turn in the applications.
And then who will decide?
Same as
of
it
us.
always is.
All of us,
All of us.
because I refuse to have
I
any
hear
of
ya.
us get accused.
We'll put it right out
Well,
all.
Bill, and that's the standard is, that
Yep.
you guys define who you want on, the clerk accepts the applications in the order they're received.
We have a lot of intelligent people in this community that are experts in their own fields.
We need business representation, resident representation, council.
Yep. And I do
Different
think we need to,
departments.
because I was a member, like I said, I was a member on the school board last time when we did this, and there was a lot of work and a lot of participation.
Yeah.
So they gotta be included.
But on a positive note too, technology has changed a lot since 1995. You know?
Anything more there, Dave?
No, unless you have more direction for me.
Thank
Sir,
you very
thank you.
much. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Is there any way that can be scanned in a PDF and emailed? I like email better than paper.
I can do that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay. All right. 2.3, discuss reassigning of Councilwoman Blanchett's committee commission assignments. So, I don't know if anybody got the list of the committees in front of, or,
Yeah, they're on my.
okay, all right.
Blanchard.
Yeah, so you want us just, I know Councilwoman Ganaga's expressed interest in the
Golf
the
community?
golf. Let me make sure we got that. Ruby Highlands, yes.
Yes, please.
Is everybody comfortable with
Yes.
with that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yay, I'm ready to.
okay, okay. One down. Okay, let's go back to the top. The Ad hoc Civil Engineering Committee. We need a replacement there. That's the city engineer, is I'm correct in assuming that? So we have one opening there.
It says environmental engineering and civic engineering both.
Well, this would, well, there's, on both of them, but they're
Okay.
two separate, so, yeah.
Gotcha.
we'll
I
do
believe
the-
I'm on that committee, Eric.
It's
I believe-
myself, and Councilwoman Ganaga, and it was Lynn.
Oh, okay. It wasn't me.
Are you interested in that one? or-
I'm on the engineering, I believe.
Okay. You are. But so was Lynn. So there's openings.
Well,
I just have a suggestion. I was going to suggest, well, I'm sorry, for the land preserve, you've become a member, so we
Yeah.
need an alternate
Yes, sir.
for the
So we
land
should
preserve.
be, do you want to move up to member and
I
then?
was today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we need an
But wait,
alternate?
We need an alternate
We need
to
an
replace.
alternate.
So I have a question,
Go ahead.
real quick. What are we, what am I doing as far as this? Am I sitting here quiet? Am I
you're
volunteering
part
to
of
do
this.
things? Has that been decided? I got an email saying it was gonna be discussed, but I didn't.
I think we all discussed it and we need you.
Is that, okay? No?
Can we get a legal interpretation of that,
Yeah,
sir?
please.
Council adopted a resolution that dealt with Mr. Robbins serving on, it was a censorship, and I believe that, gosh, I wish I had brought it.
Mm.
But
I
you
thought
know,
we were
the
gonna
council.
do that first before we.
Yeah, well, the bottom line is, regardless of the exact language that was used, council can always change its motions, its resolution, so I don't recall it being in perpetuity, and it certainly is something that the council can, by majority vote, for 4 votes, overrule.
But not during a study session?
No.
Okay. So,
So picking up these right now is kind of
so,
gag.
This is the cart before the horse.
So I just
Yeah.
say, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. We might be able to move that unless we.
Pencil them in.
I don't know.
It could be
just-
penciled in.
There's just, if we were
It's,
saving time.
let's
but-
be realistic, it's
we're
only
down a team
formality.
member.
It's only a formality.
I
We
guess
can
it's a
do
matter
the
of asking
discussion
it.
now. Is that what we want
Well,
to
at
do?
this point, we're inquiring for interest, we'll just say.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that I would like to say, when it comes to the ad hoc land preserve alternate, Councilmember Robbins and Councilmember O'Neill have been in the audience of a lot of those. So if that is something that we're going to talk about in the future to finalize this past decision, I think that would be one good place for Councilmember Robbins, because he's in the audience at almost every meeting. I used to sit next to him as an alternate.
Well, he has attended just about everything in the city,
Mhm.
to be honest with you.
Right.
You noticed it or not,
He's been in every.
at everything. We do have to look at the fact that there's an election coming up, and whoever you're putting on committees, are they gonna be here or are they not gonna be here? And I think where the question lies is, due to some legalities, there's some concern by the public if Councilman Robbins is gonna be here or is not gonna be here, is the concern that they're having. As far as him being involved in anything, I have no problem with him being involved in anything. But does it put us in a position where if something was to happen and he's removed, where does that put the whole thing? I mean, that's where the.
Right. Something could happen where one of us don't wake up tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be in
We
that
just
same
start over.
situation.
And
Yep.
that's the point. That's where I'm looking at.
So we burn that bridge when we get to it. So I think, as far as he's concerned,
I'll
is
just-
that we pencil
Him in for
wherever
the-
there's interest, we
Yeah.
pencil them in, and if we have to make some motion, then we do
Yes.
that. So let's go back down the list. So the ad hoc civil engineering, we need somebody there. So currently myself and Councilwoman Granaga. Interest, well, from any,
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor? When do you guys meet and how often?
probably just once every 6 months
Yeah.
or shortly before it's time to renew the
Okay.
civil engineering contract.
Is it during like the evening time or when do you guys usually meet?
It's usually in the evening.
Okay, all right. Well,
It can be any time.
I'm saying, if it's evenings, I'm willing to help out wherever. I'll just put that out there right now. We can make it quick and easy for, as far as I'm concerned. I haven't,
Is there any other interest? All right, we're ready.
I have a quick question.
Go right ahead.
I was told the Ad hoc Public Safety Committee that, at our last convening session, that at the end of that meeting, that Public Safety Committee was expired. And it was no longer,
We didn't take
Randy?
action to dissolve
No.
it.
No.
So it's still.
As needed.
As needed,
As
right?
needed, so
There was
it
no
would,
current
it would make
use.
sense that we put somebody there and.
I mean, I get it, and I think that committee is great, but it is misleading as well with public safety. It should also involve the police, and it needs some changes to it, so.
Well, then we need to change
It did do both.
the verbiage of it.
When?
Yeah.
The last meeting I was at was only,
Because the agenda item wasn't,
ah, gotcha.
if there was something concerning police, yeah.
Gotcha.
And you were the alternate on that, right? Or were you
No.
on it?
I was on it, yeah.
and then
Who was the alternate?
I believe.
That was you. Well, it was,
No,
I have,
it changed after the election, I thought.
see, I don't think I got the latest.
I don't have the,
I was on it to start.
Right,
Rita and myself, and
and-
I don't know who picked it.
And Councilwoman Blanchett was on it.
I have Councilwoman Blanchett, Councilwoman Ganaga, and Councilwoman O'Neill.
Okay,
and then Norton is the alternate.
Yes.
I have.
okay.
So let's go in order, because I'm getting confused here.
Move to
The environmental engineering,
anything else?
who has interest in that?
Engineering,
That's this civil, or landfill engineering.
It's only called committee or every 6 months
Mhm.
prior to expiration of the
Right.
engineering contract.
So on it right now is myself and Councilman Workman.
I will volunteer for that one too. You guys do what you gotta do later.
Any other interest? All right, then we've got the land preserve worked out, public safety, the one opening there, is that Councilman Robbins too?
Well, Chuck is the alternate, so you want to
Oh,
move
you
up?
want to move
yeah, I
up?
would like to move up on
Okay.
that one.
And we'll make David the alternate?
I would really like to get back up on that.
And just to clarify, public safety ad hoc public safety committee is Councilmember Ganaga, O'Neill. I
You.
become go from alternate to
Correct.
on it, and that's only as needed.
Yep.
Okay. Maybe we should remove that ad hoc.
Okay, then we have a ad hoc Ruby Highlands.
Millersburg,
That would be
sorry.
myself, Councilwoman Ganaga, and Councilwoman O'Neill. And is that it?
Yep.
Block
It's
grant?
not on here, it says.
Oh, the CDGB,
Yeah.
gosh, from what I remember,
That
since
sounds pain.
Wayne County changed the way they do the CDGB money, and I think they basically removed the communities from even making the decision. So
Not a
I
great
still don't
loss.
see the need for it because it's the
What do
county.
you say?
I was on that. It's not a great
It's-
loss,
it's-
trust me.
And
Wait a
they,
minute, I was on it, I always enjoyed it, it was very informative.
it was very informative.
Felt like getting my
But they
tooth filled.
changed the way Wayne County has become the manager of the CDGB money,
Right.
not the individual cities. So they did that so they can get the administrative fee and we don't get anything as a result of it, so. Yeah. So I don't think there's a need for that one. All right,
Councilwoman Blanchett, are you keeping the veterans committee status? You were on that as well. I didn't see it listed, but
I don't see it listed anyplace.
I had-
She was
I
not
had it
on
originally,
here.
and then.
It's Mayor Swift,
It's
and then the
myself and-
alternate is Councilmember Norton.
Oh, okay.
We
I have an alternate with
voted.
Lynn Blanchett.
We voted to put it on there.
I don't know when this was printed though.
Yeah, I don't have the latest one.
Yeah, I just
I
have
got
Mayor
kicked off
Swift and
everything.
Councilmember Norton.
That's what I have as well.
All right,
I don't know.
okay, that's right.
Mayor,
Okay.
I did
Yes.
find the resolution of censorship, and it, section 3 says, the council removes Councilman Dave Robbins from the council appointments to the Ad hoc Public Safety Committee, School Liaison position, Veterans Memorial Committee, and the Wyandotte Riverview Reciprocal Agreement Committee. So, all others
He's over.
are open. And again, if the 4 members of council want to change section 3, they certainly can do that as well.
Okay. If the veteran, because I know your family, if that's important to you, I'll be more than happy to be the alternate.
Let's see what everybody says first, but I appreciate that.
Yep. We're only as strong as our team.
I'm already writing change part 3.
All right, are we done with that?
Yes, sir.
Two four, proposed ordinance number 738 for double parking, police department. Chief, come on up.
Hello, sir.
We just
Hello.
gone to serious to really serious.
No, not serious at all. I just wanted to bring it to the study session, just so you knew why I was bringing this to the council meeting for approval, hopefully. So I was approached by the judge. Apparently, we don't have a double parking ordinance, so everything gets written under impeding. So if the prosecutor wants to lower a case, it's impeding. The judge wants to lower, it's impeding. And the issue with impeding, it's not so much an issue with giving somebody a break, it's the state gets part of that cut.
Mhm.
So if we pass an ordinance for double parking, which essentially is impeding traffic, then all the money stays local. So that was the reason why we wanted to do that.
Twisted my arm.
Yeah.
Sold.
So that's the only change, is it's going from a state civil infraction.
So it's not that we have huge issues with double parking. I mean, during this school pickup and drop off, I'm sure it's a nightmare, but,
Yes.
We don't, but typically an officer, like, I go on the road from time to time, if you're speeding, I'll write you an impeding traffic ticket.
mhm.
It's a break that we can give, and we have an officer that does all our tickets, and apparently he's doing impeding traffic if somebody needs a break instead of double parking.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just semantics.
All right,
But I wanted to explain it to you before I brought it.
okay.
Thank you,
So-
madam.
Councilman Robbins.
Real quick, does that, since it stays local, does that, I would assume that would help with our fees as far as what we pay, wind up, yeah. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, we receive a portion of, I don't really know how much it is, but we get a portion of the
It's called
revenues.
chicken feed, I think.
Yes, it's not a lot. We do get a portion of the
For
revenues.
us, right on.
But part of the advantage is we don't pay the court either, so.
That's right.
Got it.
And the fine will be $200.
And that's including like your driveway, blocking a sidewalk, is that considered a double park?
So
or-
double parking is if you're in the middle of the street and you're blocking the street, you're parked next to another car.
Okay,
It's not a lot of times people do that. They do it in front of schools,
Mhm.
so.
got you.
What is the fee for impeding traffic?
I knew you were gonna ask that, so I looked it up. It's
Thank you.
150.
Mhm.
0 points.
It is 0
Yes, it
points.
is zero.
Okay.
This is also 0 points. That's why a lot of judges and magistrates and prosecutors, that's why they redo so nobody gets stuff on their driveway.
I'm not gonna say the last time I got a ticket because I'll jinx myself.
Yeah, don't
But I'm
do it.
very proud of it.
And that's it. Anybody have
Good
any
stop.
questions?
Any questions for the chief? Thank you, chief, that was an easy one.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Funny.
All right.
All right,
See,
chief
how many
number
been
2.
stopped? Raise your
Discuss
hand.
proposed ordinance number 739 for cannabis-related fire inspection. Come on up, chief. Oh, my.
Is it our turn?
And deputy chief.
It is.
That's there.
You guys been very patient.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
This ordinance that we're bringing forward is actually required because of the recent ordinance that was adopted by the city. Without this, we have no inspection or enforcement authority over such operations. So this is going hand in hand with what the state currently does, so we're just adopting that, bringing it forward.
So is there anything that's unique about this as opposed to what we have, or is it just to align us with the state requirements?
Well, it follows the state requirements as to what they're doing right now. I mean, Rodney can speak a little further on, because he's done all the research on it. There's two specific ordinances that we have to bring forward. We would just amend our current ordinance and roll that into it.
So currently, we follow the International Fire Code for our inspections, 2015 edition. That is in line with the Michigan Building Code 2015 edition. That's why we made that ordinance, came forward earlier this year to update from 2009 to 2015, so it goes hand in hand with the building code. The 2015 International Fire Code does not have any provisions for cannabis. So if you brought that into, then someone could be in conflict with the fire code. And then you could potentially have, the state would come out and inspect the marijuana division, and they would say, well, the owner could say, well, I followed the city international, or IFC 2015, I thought that's all I had to comply with, and then now the state says, no, this is the fire code. So, state, actually, their website says 2018, but I confirm with the marijuana division that it is 2021, that the state is, they just haven't updated their website. So that's why we brought forward NFPA 1 and 101, which is life safety rules. That way, when the state inspectors are out with me and we're going through a cannabis business, we're aligned. They know exactly what to build to per the state requirements. Our municipal requirements are the same. So there's no, I thought this applied when this applies, so.
Everyone's on the same page?
Yeah.
And what, we're only talking, I don't even know the proper term to use, provisioning, dispensary, whatever. We're not talking commercial grow with high output, electricity, heat, none of that.
Doesn't matter, that's the fire code that, otherwise you couldn't build, you couldn't technically put that in because you don't have a provision for it. And the International Fire Code will have, we've been told that they're going to make updates, and it will probably be in the next International Fire Code. But the state probably won't change. If they do change, then maybe we'll do that, because most communities do have the International Fire Code as their adopted fire code.
So, just, my simple mind is this unique because there's cannabis in there, or what is the driving force behind this?
Behind the NFPA 1 or the new edition?
The new edition.
It's just up, every 3 years, they update the revision to the code. 2018, they brought it into the NFPA 1 and 101, but 2021 is the most newest edition.
David, you have something?
Yes, so this update is going to essentially put the builders of our new businesses coming in before they have to, the state could still come in, right? And
The state will come in twice a year.
Okay, so if this isn't essentially adopted, they could make a redo?
Yes.
Okay, so this is good for our
Yeah,
incoming businesses?
We're gonna be able to tell our businesses what fire code we have here from a jurisdiction standpoint, and it aligns with the state, so when the state inspector comes in, there's no surprises. Last thing we want is a business to come in and say, oh, I was misled, I thought these things applied, now they gotta spend thousands of dollars redoing stuff. It's not fair. We should be transparent with the businesses, so everyone's on the same page.
So if we adopt this, they'll be coming in ground level, everything up to code.
Yep,
That's
they'll
right.
know, and then they'll know what the inspection process looks like too.
Oh, good.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I think, I could be wrong, but I think there's gonna probably be a couple of these that we have to do, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Police Chief Allen, you guys have to have access to their cameras at any time like the state, correct? So we'll have to, Mr. Legal Counsel, we'll have to adopt an ordinance for that also, right?
I'll have a conversation with the chief about that. There is another one that Mr. Skirdo is about to mention.
Okay.
As soon as he gets up here.
All right, I jumped ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, any other questions for you guys?
No, thank you guys very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right. Where we at?
Special projects.
Dave Skirdo.
Whatever order you want to go in here.
Yep,
Okay,
you lead off.
I got more ordinances.
Huh?
What we have to do in the zoning ordinance is for each district that the cannabis is allowed to go in, there's a list of uses, and there, it's a housekeeping item, where we just have to include adult use cannabis retailer in there, so it's nothing more than a housekeeping item, nothing substantial to it, it was just populating the list of the districts. It is, kind of ties in, it will tie in to the cannabis ordinance.
Very good.
Okay?
Thank you.
The other things are, the other items, Pyramel was in today to meet with Mr. Dobek, the engineers, DPW. They are going to expand again. They're expected to come in to meet with the planning commission in April, they're shooting for, end of April. Also, on March 2nd, we have our first cannabis business coming in front of the planning commission, as well as the Duncan Retail Center on that vacant lot next to the mobile. They're coming in March 2nd.
So waiting to hear you say that.
So,
Thank you. Oh, that's the old Denny's property, right?
yes, correct.
Who's next?
So Ohio.
Good evening, everyone. We're waiting for the weather to improve to start some construction projects. We have the Pennsylvania water main extension from Grange to the end of the city, to the west side of the city. We have the Vreeland and Wendy Court North, also water main replacement coming up. The Pazer is 90% done, and the sewer lining will be starting again in March. It was delayed because of labor and material shortage. And we are working on the road sectioning program. Also, the fueling station at the DPW building will be starting shortly. They received all the parts, and we're hoping that they'll be starting in March. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Boyer. Landfill.
Just a few things. We are doing the first quarter groundwater sampling next week. Eagle is planning to be on site to observe the sampling. They're not going to take any samples or anything, but they will just be observing our practices and sample collection. The water treatment expansion is still moving forward. It's going slowly, but it's still moving forward. We're still having our weekly meetings and getting closer with design. And we still have not heard anything back from Eagle about the South 7 certification, but we expect to have an answer by the middle of March so that we can start using the South for waste placement.
Thank you. Any questions for Jennifer?
No, sir.
Thank you. That's it?
That's it from all my engineering.
Okay. Any other business council wants to bring up at this point?
Your Honor,
Lynn?
I think everybody got the email from Glenn. Is it Zeka?
Yes.
That was a stab in the dark.
I didn't.
That doesn't sound familiar.
It was about the use of dog
Dog
parks.
parks.
Oh.
You were on it.
When was it sent?
February 12th.
So yesterday?
I didn't get it.
I didn't get it.
I'll
Well,
forward
they
it.
don't like you guys.
I'll forward it right now.
Well, that goes to Sean. It's S. O'Neill.
Yeah.
Instead of Susie.
I'll forward it right now. You didn't get it, Mr. Mayor?
I don't remember it.
Okay.
So anyway, Lynn, go ahead.
Well, we passed this around before, a dog park, and I don't know whose lap we dropped it in to look for potentially a spot in Riverview for residents to have a dog park. Or can we look into finding out why we're no longer able to use the dog park in Brownstown? Or Southgate has a free dog park, but this resident was informed that it will only be available to residents starting in the spring. I don't know what our animal population is here in Riverview, but I mean, critters, dogs need a place to stretch, and I wondered if we could even just look into it for this gentleman and then publish our findings.
Well, we can look at it again. I know we looked in the past,
Right.
and
It's quite expensive.
we were told if we were gonna do it right, you're talking 10, 20 grand,
Oh, I thought it was
building it.
more than that. I thought it was
Yeah.
like 150,000.
Yeah.
More than that.
What's the
Drainage,
liability on that?
cleanup, liability,
It's insane.
fencing,
Okay.
insurance because of one attacks the other.
Yeah, if a dog
lawsuit.
catches something from the other dog.
Yeah, so,
Okay, then can we look into?
but we can talk to Southgate and see if maybe we can work out an agreement where.
I had a, just,
Yeah,
I
but
don't
I'm
think
seeing it from
Brownstown
we have one
wants-
meeting here, please. I had some discussions with Mayor Cuspa. They might be open, but their park is gonna be for residents only, and it's gonna be key access type things. So they have issues too, but we could approach them, see if it's some type of sharing agreement or whatever, but there'll certainly be a cost to it. And I don't think that'll satisfy the Riverview residents who wanna go take their dog to a park here.
Mr. Mayor, in the future, with it being so expensive, is that something that we can maybe see if we can get some sponsorships from companies that are expanding as such, like pharmaceutical companies? And
Absolutely.
no, I'm just saying,
That's a good idea.
I'm just saying, we have new
Sounds like
companies
fun.
coming in,
No.
and, we have a new pet store. See what kind of participation we can get from, we just went through the presentation from Plant Moran. It's not like we're, here, no problem, let me
Yeah.
rip that off for you.
But what about the insurance? The insurance has to be, the cost
Yeah.
has to be high. I mean, we'd have to pay that.
And who wants to give up their park to turn it into a dog park?
Well, that, Mr. Mayor, that was my first question. I mean, you guys looked at this prior to me. Where was the potential location
I
that you
believe
were
it was
looking at?
Glenn's Park.
Yeah. Well, it's a cat park, okay, but obviously where the significant cost comes in, it's not necessarily the park. The park has to have drainage, has to have a fence,
I
you want to have
agree.
private access, and the big thing here is parking. You have to provide parking.
Right.
None of our parks, except for Young
Right.
Patriots, has any measurable part of parking.
I
So,
agree
you know,
100%.
It's not an easy, it's a popular item to talk about, but it's not an easy fix.
From experience, I've participated at Woodhaven's when my dog was young, and it only took me about 3 trips to say this isn't for me, because not everybody has well-behaved dogs.
Right.
And once you get bit on the ankle by a dog, you tend, but I'm just saying, something to explore, but yes, we did revisit this. You have a great relationship with the mayor from Southgate, maybe you could make a phone call and see if that's correct, that it's only for Southgate, I don't know.
I'll verify that.
Yeah. I think it is, I think you're right, but,
If it's not, it will be soon.
right.
Any other business council wants to bring up?
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
I wanted to just mention one thing, kind of talking to different people in council, and we were wondering, I know there's in place where we cannot speak directly to department heads or administration, things like that, about work environments. Is there anyone on here that would like to work on changing that, so some communication can go back and forth? Obviously, nothing about contracts
It's
or
all city
anything like that.
employees, I believe. It's
But-
not department heads,
Oh.
it's city employees.
And city employees as
All
well,
of them.
so.
Mhm.
Because I know there was issues in the past with filtering problems, and some wanted to reach out and did, but it was always, wasn't me, I don't know what you're talking about, and things like that. So I was just wondering if anyone else has had any thoughts on this.
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
my opinion, first of all, I think we'll have to change the charter. It's his employees. We're gonna start managing our employees. Let's start doing it. You'll have fun.
No, I'm just.
Oh, I thought it was
Just-
policy, I didn't know it was
It-
city
it-
charter.
We have a strong manager form of government per our charter. So they all report to him. Your role is to evaluate, hire and fire your manager, so. That's the charter, and I think that there's some council policies that also address communications. I recall that in the past, I recall a sergeant in the police department coming to the microphone. It resulted in some undermining and discipline ensued. And there's been a chain of command sort of process that we've observed over the years, so.
There's been a lot of issues with the fire department that became absolute nightmares because
I
people
remember
got
that.
involved in that.
But can we just specify, it says, I don't think there's anything that stops us or prevents us from talking to employees, department heads, or whatever. It's, you just have to be careful to not get into, like you said, work environment things.
Right.
And I'll tell you, it always goes that way. You
I know, and
so-
that's the issue. They're like,
When-
it's just something you banter about and talk about and give ideas and things like that, and it's just a roadblock. And some people
When you
feel that they
open that
can't.
door up.
I know, and I get the Pandora's
I will
box.
tell you
I-
right
I
up,
totally
right out
see it.
straight. I had some major issues with somebody from our last council that, when I was the manager, that walked in the pool area and talked about firing people because they weren't doing the right thing, and what he was gonna do, and he called up my secretary at the time. I guess we were allowed to call them secretaries back then. And was not happy with her performance because she didn't move fast enough with what needed to be done because it didn't make him happy because they were in his pool. So my point being is,
Yeah, I can see
one
it from the
person might go
opposite
in
side.
and it's just a nice issue, and another person crosses lines that they have no business crossing, which creates an absolute nightmare.
So,
Just so you
so
know.
did I screw up yesterday?
Huh?
Because I drove by the community center, and, because I just was going
You
to
were the one
successes.
that caused that big.
No, man. But while I was there was two DBW workers, and I said, hey, guys, how are you doing?
No, see, that, and that's.
So, what that,
That's
I
the
just,
point. You
No,
gotta
it's-
use, you gotta
yeah.
use some, you don't
Yeah.
walk in there and start telling them how to do their job.
no, I was
Tell them-
curious.
Or say, do you have a problem? You got a problem, I'll take care of that department head. Don't you
No,
worry
no,
about it.
no,
But I think
That's
that.
what happens.
I
So,
think that's the confusion though, for sometimes
Yeah.
the employees, that they
Right.
feel a little resistance, they don't want to talk to us because they think that they can't.
so.
I know.
Whether it's a
employees-
brief,
100%.
yes.
They, as soon as I walk in, they're like, oh, I gotta go, and they leave, or something.
Well, we've had
So that's why I wanted the discussion, that's all.
an employee or a council individual who basically said he could walk down the hallway and fire our recreation director anytime he wanted to. First of all, where do you get the power to do that? But apparently, he felt he did. And that was part of talking to employees or having them talk to you. This guy was rattled. How would you like to have somebody?
Absolutely.
Hey, you know the big guy? He's gonna come and fire you.
Back off.
So-
You're going too far.
So-
They'll figure out who
But,
they are.
but Mr. Mayor, you being the captain, I mean, if I'm at the gas station, a city employee pulls up to get a Coke, you can say, hey, how you doing? How's your day going?
Absolutely, and
it's-
and I think it's a good
wait,
idea
can
to
I
actually.
wasn't done yet.
Okay.
It's common sense that if an employee comes up to me and wants to start complaining about his work conditions or a contract, I'm gonna say,
Whoa.
you need to take that up with your department head.
Absolutely.
I'm here to talk about the weather, and
How'd your finger?
And I think it's always good, and to your point is, it's always good to listen. It's the exchange that concerns me. And when it leads to complaining about whatever the work environment or their boss, like that's when it becomes, in my opinion, an issue.
well, that's when.
I think we've got great employees, and I have,
Right.
good relationships with all of them. But it's just that we need to be careful. And I think we're all smart enough to figure out when we're getting into an area we shouldn't be. That's what all it comes down to.
So,
So it's correct.
So just remember, they all work for
Common
Jeff.
sense.
right, common sense, right.
You can't tell them
Any
they're
other
not gonna get
business?
fired and they're gonna get
Not
fired.
done
You
yet.
can't tell them.
Okay, public comment. Anyone wishing to address, go a little speech. Anybody want to talk?
It's 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Your Honor, real quick, there's if those of us who pray, we should probably pray for the campus of Michigan State. Just got some information that there's active shooter up there, multiple. And so I normally wouldn't even bring it up because it doesn't have to do with us, except for the fact that I think some things are more important than just this. But I really think we should say a prayer, or
Wow.
go home and say a prayer, however you all want to do it, but just be aware, there's a lot going on up there right now as we speak. So.
Especially when one of our colleagues has a child there. So
right now.
we're praying.
Could everybody, after we're off, could everybody stay for just a moment?
As a quorum?
Well, I don't care if you
Okay,
stay
we're
in
done.
groups of threes.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, thank you everyone.